The first rumble came from somewhere far above, a tremor that ran through the metal bones of the hive like the footstep of an angry god. In the deep tunnels of Sector 7 Gamma, Logan felt it through his boots, through the mining tools in his hands, through the very air itself. Seismic activity, Vex muttered, checking his instruments. Probably another reactor malfunction in the upper levels. We've been getting more of those lately. But Logan's senses were screaming something different. That wasn't a machine malfunction. That was an explosion. A big one. And it smelled like burning fuel. Cordite. And something else. Something organic and foul. The second explosion was closer. Close enough to rain dust from the tunnel ceiling and set the emergency lights flashing red. The mining crew looked up nervously as fragments of rockcrete pattered down around them. "That's not seismic," said Torino's replacement, a young miner named Hendrik. "That's ordnance." Vex was already reaching for his Voxcaster when the third explosion hit. This one was close enough to throw them all to their knees, close enough to crack the reinforced tunnel supports, close enough to fill the air with the acrid smoke of burning promethium. The Vox crackled to life, a panicked voice cutting through the static.
All units! All units! We are under attack! Repeat, Sector 7 Gamma is under attack! Xenos forces have breached the upper mining levels! All workers to emergency stations! This is not a drill!
Logan felt something cold settle in his stomach. Not fear. Something else. Something he'd been suppressing for months. The familiar weight of impending violence. The electric anticipation of combat. His body was already moving before his mind caught up. Muscles tensing. Senses sharpening. No. Stay down. Stay hidden. This isn't your fight. Emergency protocols. Vex was shouting over the sound of distant weapons fire.
Everyone to the evacuation lifts! Move!
The mining crew ran through the tunnels, their helmet lamps, cutting wild arcs through the dust-choked air. Behind them, Logan could hear it now, the unmistakable sound of orc voices, guttural and loud, echoing down from the levels above. And underneath that, the screaming of dying miners. They reached the evacuation lift to find chaos. Dozens of workers crowded around the platform, pushing and shoving in their desperation to escape. The lift could only hold 20 at a time, and there were easily 60 people fighting for space. Women and children first. Vex was trying to maintain order, but panic was setting in.
Injured workers next! Everyone else waits for the next lift!
That's when the orcs broke through. They came pouring out of a maintenance tunnel like a green tide of violence and destruction. Crude weapons, cobbled together armor, and voices raised in the eternal orc battle cry.
Whoa!
The first miner to face them was old Korvek, a 20-year veteran. He raised his mining laser in a futile gesture of defiance. The orc that killed him was twice his size, wielding a massive chopper that split him from shoulder to hip in a single swing. The creature kicked the body aside and kept coming. Logan watched from his position at the back of the crowd, watched as Hendrik tried to run and got a crude spear through his spine, watched as Maria Santos, the tunnel supervisor, disappeared under a pile of green-skinned monsters, watched as Vex raised his hands in surrender and took a bolt shell to the face. These were his people. Not friends exactly, but the closest thing to comrades he'd had in this nightmare universe. The men and women who'd shared the corpse starch rations, who'd helped him pull others out of tunnel collapses, who'd accepted him as one of their own. They were dying. And he was just standing there, watching. Stay down. It's not your fight. You're not a hero anymore. You're just another worker, just another. A child screamed. Logan's head snapped around. There, pressed against the far wall, was one of the worker families. A woman clutching a boy who couldn't have been more than 8 years old. The orcs were advancing on them, weapons raised, laughing at the terror in their eyes. The boy looked directly at Logan. His mouth moved, forming a single silent word. Help. Something inside Logan snapped. He'd spent months eating food made from human corpses. Months watching good people die in preventable accidents. months bowing his head and accepting a system that ground up everything decent and fed it back to itself. Months telling himself it wasn't his fight, wasn't his responsibility, wasn't his problem. But this was exactly his problem. The first orc never saw him coming. Logan's claws punched through the creature's skull from behind, adamantium sliding between bone plates like they were made of paper. He yanked the body backward, using it as a shield as the other orcs turned toward this new threat.
Oi, where'd he come from? Look at them claws! That ain't natural! Wow, good scrap.
Logan had forgotten what it felt like to let go. Months of suppressed rage, months of enforced compliance, months of swallowing his hatred for this universe and everything in it. All of it came pouring out in a berserker fury that would have impressed Khorne himself. He moved like liquid death through the orc mob, his claws carved through crude armor and green flesh with equal ease. He ducked under a chopa swing and opened the wielder from groin to sternum. He caught a thrown knife in his shoulder, heeled around it, and used the distraction to take out 2 more orcs with a single sweeping attack. The miners who were still alive could only stare in shock. This was their quiet, unassuming co-worker, the man who kept to himself and never caused trouble. But the thing fighting the orcs wasn't human. It was a force of nature, a whirlwind of claws and blood, and barely contained violence. An orc knob, bigger than the rest, stepped forward with a power claw crackling with energy.
You're a right nasty git. Let's see how tough you really are.
The power claw caught Logan across the chest, tearing through his mining gear and laying his ribs bare. The pain was immense, electric, the kind that would have dropped a normal man instantly. Logan just looked down at the wound, watched his healing factor knit muscle and flesh back together, and grinned. My turn. He grabbed the orc's wrist, his grip strong enough to crush ceramite. With his other hand, he drove his claws up through the creature's jaw and into its brain. The power claw went dead, its energy field flickering out as its wielder collapsed. The surviving orcs looked at each other, then at Logan, then at the pile of green corpses at his feet. For the first time in their lives, they felt something approaching fear.
Scarper,
One of them yelled.
that ain't natural. That's some kind of demon.
They ran. Orcs, who lived for battle and died laughing, actually ran from a single human with claws. Logan stood in the aftermath, breathing heavily, steam rising from his healing wounds. Around him, the surviving miners stared in a mixture of awe and terror. He'd saved them, yes, but he'd also revealed exactly what he was. Something that didn't belong in their universe of acceptable horrors. The woman with the child stepped forward cautiously. She was covered in dust and blood, but her son was unharmed. She looked up at Logan with tears in her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. We thought we were going to die." Logan shook the blood from his claws and tried to find his voice. It came out rougher than he intended. Months of suppressed emotion making it crack. "You're safe now. Get to the surface. Get as far from here as you can." But Vex's replacement, a supervisor named Goran, was already reaching for his Voxcaster. "Control, this is Mining Sector 7 Gamma. We have a situation. We have a mutant, possible chaos taint, requesting immediate Arbite's response." Logan heard the transmission and felt his carefully constructed world crumble around him. He'd known this moment would come eventually. Known that staying hidden was a temporary solution at best. But actually hearing the words, seeing the fear in the eyes of people he'd worked alongside for months, it hit harder than he'd expected. "Goran, don't," he said quietly. "You don't understand what you're doing." "I understand perfectly," Goran replied, backing away. "You're an aberrant, a mutant. You've been hiding among us, probably sent by Chaos cultists or Xenos infiltrators. The Emperor's mercy that we discovered you before you could corrupt the rest of us." The other miners were backing away now too, all except the woman with the child. She stood her ground, looking between Logan and Goran with growing understanding. "He saved us," she said firmly. "Without him, We'd all be dead. Better dead than tainted, Goran replied. Control, are you receiving? We need immediate extraction and purification protocols. The response came back crackling with static and authority. Confirmed Sector 7 Gamma, quarantine protocols in effect. Adeptus has started his response team inbound. Do not approach the aberrant. Repeat, do not approach. Logan felt a familiar cold weight in his stomach. Space Marines, the 8-foot-tall angels of death he'd heard whispered about in the worker habs. Super soldiers created to be the ultimate expression of the Emperor's will. He looked around at the miners, at the orc corpses, at the blood on his hands. His months of careful anonymity were over. The surveillance he'd suspected, the watchers he'd noticed, they'd been waiting for exactly this moment, waiting for him to reveal himself so they could justify what came next. My name is Logan. What's yours? Sarah, she replied. This is my son, Marcus. You need to get out of here. All of you need to get out. What's coming next? It's going to be bad. Logan looked up toward the surface, where the sound of orc weapons fire was gradually being replaced by the distinctive crack of bolt rounds. The Space Marines were already here, already moving through the upper levels, cleansing everything in their path. They're not just coming for me, he said quietly. Anyone who's been in contact with me, anyone who might be tainted by association, they'll kill all of you just to be safe. Sarah's eyes widened in horror. But we're loyal citizens. We work for the Emperor. We've done nothing wrong. In this universe, that doesn't matter. Guilt by association is still guilt. He turned to Goran, who was still clutching his Voxcaster like a talisman. You just signed everyone's death warrant, including your own. The Emperor protects the faithful, Goran replied, but his voice was less certain now. The Emperor, Logan said, starting to walk toward the main tunnel. Ain't here, bub. Behind him, he could hear Sarah gathering the other survivors, trying to convince them to evacuate. Some listened, others stayed, trusting in Imperial mercy that would never come. Logan made his way through the mining complex, following the sound of weapons fire toward the surface. He could smell ceramite and incense, the distinctive scent markers of Space Marine power armor. They were moving methodically, clearing each level, leaving no witnesses. It was time to meet the angels of death. Time to see just how far this universe's definition of acceptable casualties really extended. He flexed his hands, feeling the familiar weight of adamantium in his knuckles. And for the first time in months, Logan smiled, not with happiness, but with the grim satisfaction of a man who'd finally stopped pretending to be something he wasn't. The false peace was over. The war was just beginning.